what are your initial impressions of Bulgaria and its people?
My initial impressions of Bulgaria and its people is that it's a very lovely, warm, friendly country. The people are very hospitable, very welcoming. In fact, remind me a lot of Indian people, the way they are. And I've been made to feel very welcome.
Thank you. And how has your experience been so far covering the Bulgarian national elections and the elections for members of the European Parliament here?
Covering the elections here in Sofia has been an amazing experience so far. I mean, the big voting day was yesterday, and I got to see it firsthand for the first time, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, just the general sort of vibe and fervor that there is for elections. I feel like with our Indian elections having just completed, I felt like that just kind of that spirit carried on.
Okay, and can you highlight any unique aspects of the Bulgarian election process that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the aspect that stood out for me from the Bulgarian elections point of view, which are of course the 2-in-1 elections, as they were calling it, the national elections and the European Parliament elections at the same time. I think two things. One, I found everything kind of just worked so smoothly, which was very impressive. Like, two big elections going on in parallel, and it just seemed to work very seamlessly. The other thing that stood out for me, I think, I would say, is the approachability of some of the senior leaders here. So I first covered the vice president who came in to vote. She stood in queue like any other voter, waited her turn, went in, chose to vote by machine, and then just went out, spoke to the reporters very calmly for as long as they wanted to ask her questions. Same with the president. I found very approachable in that sense. I would say probably things don't work as easily in India. I mean, there's a lot more security issues and things like that come up, and it's a lot more structured than I found here. It was more sort of easygoing, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and a record number of people voted in the elections in India. In Bulgaria, once again, there is a record low voter turnout. So how do you think this can be changed from the practice in India? How do you guys get to the level of high voter turnout?
Oh, good question. I mean, I just feel like in India, the biggest thing that I found different between the Indian elections and the Bulgarian elections was also the scale of it, which we can't deny. I mean, India is one of the biggest countries in the world, so there's that. But I think we kind of literally grow up with the idea of elections very deeply embedded in us. We take great pride in it. We enjoy it. We take it seriously, but at the same time, we also kind of, see it as a big festival. We call it a festival of democracy. And in fact, when voting happens, you'll see posters and buntings and all those kind of things, almost like as if it was a celebration. So I don't know if at a personal level, if I was suggesting, I would say, to get people more excited about it, because I feel like there was a lack of excitement here among the voters. And can't blame them, right? I mean, they've had so many national elections in the last few years, so I think they're probably quite tired as well. So,
indeed. So, you've mentioned that it's a logistical, almost a nightmare. How do the logistical aspects of the Bulgarian elections compare to the ones in India?
Oh, I think the logistical side and the scale of the elections between Bulgaria and India, I mean, by sheer numbers, I guess, we can't compare at all. Like, India is just having to deal with all these multiple phases that we have just to make sure that every last citizen, no matter how remote their location, it gets the chance to vote. And the other thing is we went very straight towards the machine voting system, and we've stayed with that in the last few elections now. It's just one option, and these are machines that are not connected to internet or anything, and they've been proven to really work well, and I think that's speeded up and kind of streamlined the process of voting as well. Whereas in Bulgaria, what I did notice is there is still the option that voters have between a paper ballot and a machine ballot. So I feel like maybe in that sense, they're complicating their logistics a little bit, but then I guess they have fewer people, fewer electorate. So probably that can carry on. But maybe if they went towards one option, it would even streamline it further.
How do Bulgarian political campaigns compare to those in India? Because we've talked about that, like the big rallies. Did you see that in Bulgaria, and what are your impressions on the political campaigning? Did you see any?
To be honest, I was looking for to capture some of that excitement and vibe, but I found it very, very different from the way we have it in India. It's much more subdued, I felt, and but the only thing that stood out for me was, I believe, some funny poster campaigns, like, you know, and actually I think the Electoral Commission had to step in and ban those posters because they were targeting a certain party and specifically certain candidates. So those kind of things, I mean, probably we wouldn't get that much in India.
We're gonna get to India. The current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, won the elections, but his party lost 63 seats in the Lok Sabha and fell short on a government-forming majority. How do you see the current political climate in India influencing the global perception of the country? And do you think there is going to be any shift in the global, like on the Indian stance on the global issues, like the war in Ukraine or the war in the Middle East?
On India's stance on global issues, I would say there will be a large scale of continuity, actually, because the Prime Minister Modi, has been re-elected effectively for a third term. He's just been sworn in for a third term. And yes, the party that he heads, the Bharatiya Janata Party, did lose seats in these elections. But that's the beauty of our democracy, you know, that's democracy in action. The National Democratic Alliance, which the BJP is part of, is still in majority. It's still the one that's forming the government. So in that sense, there will be a large degree of continuity, especially on the global scale. Domestically, things will, you know, change a little because the regional parties will have more of will try and exercise more of an influence on the ruling party.
You're also scheduled to cover the general elections in the UK in the beginning of July. What are your expectations for the votes?
The UK elections are going to be very, very interesting this time because I think we don't expect much of a surprise because in all the pre-election surveys and opinion polls, the opposition Labour Party is way ahead. And I think that would be expected after 14 years of a Conservative Party-led government. Effectively, I mean, we had the first Indian heritage Prime Minister in the UK, in Rishi Sunak. So there is a bit of that to watch this time to see how the Indian diaspora, which is quite large in the UK, how they tend to vote. But that's probably the only interesting aspect that may throw up some surprises.
What are the key issues driving the UK elections?
So I think top of the agenda, probably to driving the UK elections, I would fair to say would be cost of living crisis. And both parties are kind of claiming to be the one to help households that are struggling with their bills and mortgages and rents. So I think that is the topmost category in which people would decide which party to go to. And to be fair, there's very little difference between the two main parties on this. They both claim, you know, they're going to make life easier for the electorate. So it's the voter who will decide in the end. And I guess some of the other issues, foreign policy comes into play a lot. Immigration is a big issue in the UK. I mean, especially illegal migration. It's just, people are dying making these really dangerous journeys across the English Channel. So, you know, whether it's not even a straight case of pro-immigration or anti-immigration. People just want one of the parties to, you know, have a good solution to these problems.
What advice would you give as an international journalist on covering elections?
I think the main thing to be on top of is just kind of have all the facts and figures in your head, and probably without getting too bogged down with those details. I think ultimately the thing to remember always is that people want simple answers mostly.